Hey YouTubers, it's Charlie. So this is going to be my episode 3 and 4 review from Daredevil. I'll also include some stuff from episode 1 and 2 that are a little spoilery that I kept out of my non-spoilery review. Just to open it up, I know a lot of you are asking questions about where Daredevil falls in the timeline of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and like where's the Avengers Tower, and just a couple small things like that. Daredevil comes after Winter Soldier, so S.H.I.E.L.D. has fallen. People are still rebuilding after the Battle of Manhattan because they keep referring to the event. But since we don't see the Avengers Tower in the skyline, we can just presume that they haven't finished building it yet, so this is before Age of Ultron. They do make light references to heroes and their consequences, so that's like a subtle wink at the Avengers themselves. And I think depending on some of the other cast that they bring into Captain America Civil War, we could see some Daredevil references. Even if he doesn't have a starring role, we could hear about the Devil of Hell's Kitchen. The Netflix series will be relatively self-contained, so just expect the same treatment in terms of crossover with characters, just like a little bit more once we see the other Netflix characters, but that's about it. Now that Marvel has access to Spider-Man in a small way, we also might see some integration of Spider-Man related stuff, like the Daily Bugle, for instance. Just careful for spoilers from the episodes if you haven't seen them yet. So what I'm going to do, because this is a little bit different in the way they posted the episodes, is I'm mostly going to focus on like the character beats. Episode 3 is Rabbit in a Snowstorm, referring to Kingpin's painting here. Episode 4 is In the Blood. Most of these episodes are dedicated to introducing the other characters. We even get like a villain flashback. So as much as we get hero flashbacks for Matt Murdock, we get flashbacks for the Kingpin and the Russians. The most exciting characters, at least, beyond the Kingpin, I think that we meet in these episodes are Claire Temple. We get a deeper dive into her. I mean, we met her in episode 2. And Vanessa. Two relatively minor characters in the comics, but ones that I think that the TV show, that the Netflix series, is going to make much more use of. Episode 3 is mostly about the defense of the bowling alley killer, the creepily calm bowling alley killer. If you're a little confused as to why Kingpin wanted to hire them for this, he basically wanted to slowly rein them in a little bit, bring them on the Kingpin team, so to speak. It just made the whole trial seem more legit. We get to see Matt Murdock in a courtroom scene for the first time. This is a lot of fun. I expect to see more of this in season 2 whenever that comes. He solves as many problems in the courtroom as he does with punching and kicking. It's also a reminder that he's a badass attorney, he's really smart. So on the other side of the coin, Karen Page and Ben Urich start their investigations into Kingpin's company. Whenever they met and Ben Urich said that he looked into Karen's past and found some really fishy stuff, that's a reference to stuff from the Born Again storyline. That's a comic book that Frank Miller wrote, so if we get to season 2, we might hear about that stuff. But it isn't a reference to anything that happened in season 1 of Daredevil, so the shady stuff she was involved in had nothing to do with what's going on with the Kingpin right now. I am a big fan of this version of Karen Page, the Daredevil TV series version. It's just, she's not a hooker with a heart of gold like most of Frank Miller's women, and she solves most of her problems. The showrunner, Steven DeKnight, actually clarified that this isn't like a straight-up adaptation of a Frank Miller comic. He said they just took a lot of visual elements as well as characters and kind of made them their own. It's kind of the same deal with the movies, with the Marvel Cinematic Universe changing characters just a little bit. Episode 4, though, also brings us to this big Claire Temple, Matt Murdock storyline. The Russians capture Claire, Matt Murdock goes after them. This is the beginning of the end for the Russians, pretty much. I really liked his rescue scene where he basically takes all the Russians out, and then when he's giving his big hero monologue to that final villain, Claire Temple just whacks him with the baseball bat. That's another good example of a twist on a Frank Miller character. Claire Temple is from the comics. You can think of her as the night nurse character from the comics. She's just a nurse who treats the street level heroes whenever they get the shit kicked out of them. So she has high crossover potential for Luke Cage, Iron Fist, Jessica Jones. They'll be running around getting their butts kicked in their own episodes, so they'll need someone to patch them up eventually. Most of the events on Daredevil are self-contained to Hell's Kitchen. It sounds like a relatively small area, but it's right here in Manhattan. After the 80s, whenever Giuliani cleaned up New York, they renamed Hell's Kitchen to Midtown West to make it sound nicer. The Avengers Tower, just as a point of reference, is over here in the middle of Midtown. So at some point in these Netflix series, we'll probably see an Avengers Tower, at least by Defenders, I think. Ben and Karen's stories start to come together a little bit more. He starts to come on board. Initially he's very reluctant, but then he's like, I came here to investigate this auction too. I wasn't here to find you. I like the fax machine joke that they paid off. Foggy goes on and on about this story that apparently he tells to Matt every time he gets pissed off. I know it seems like they might be tying the Foggy and Karen characters together. In the comics, both Matt Murdock and Foggy Nelson had this love triangle going on with Karen Page at various points. I'm kind of glad they don't lean on it too hard because it doesn't really fit with this dark tone that they're going with the series. The bar that they end up hanging out a lot at is Josie's. That's also straight out of the Daredevil comics, the classic Daredevil comics. Really, I think like the biggest WTF from these 2 episodes is the end of episode 4 when Kingpin like literally decapitates the Russian with the car door. I mean, he beats the crap out of him first, but he literally just keeps smashing that door. That's a good example of how Daredevil is like an HBO version of a Marvel TV show, like an HBO version of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. We also get a teaser for another comic book character, Melvin Potter. He's the guy that makes Kingpin's special armor suits. They only reference him. In the comics, he eventually turns into the Gladiator character. I'm not really expecting that on the Daredevil show. We really only just get like a slight introduction to him. I'll talk about him more in my later videos because he's definitely important to the Matt Murdock Daredevil character. Just to go a little bit deeper into some of the characters that I haven't talked about a lot, Leland Owlsley, he is a big villain from the Daredevil comics in his own right, beyond Kingpin. He's appeared in the more recent Daredevil comics too, like a younger version of him. But his character traits flow a lot from what you see on screen. Like he's a money man, calculating, but very dangerous. Like a version of Kingpin if he was much more analytical and calculating. Basically an accountant, which is what he's playing on the TV series. It's just an added bonus that the villain from Shawshank is playing him. I know a lot of people are wondering if the Claire Temple character is tied to Luke Cage because in the comics, they used to be married. I mean, they're divorced. Claire said that she had an ex that was named Mike. That could be Mike Peterson from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., aka Deathlock. I kind of think it's more of a coincidence because they have a child together, Deathlock and his wife. Based on the age of that child, Claire would have had to have the baby when she was really, really young. So it is, I mean, it's possible, but I think it's more of a coincidence. If you're wondering how old the characters are on this, think about it this way. So Matt and Foggy just ended their internship right after law school, so they're still in their late 20s. I think Claire's about the same age. No idea how old Luke Cage, Jessica Jones, or Iron Fist are going to be whenever they show up. These first seasons are pseudo-origin stories, so I'd expect them to be younger too, like late 20s, early 30s tops. The Ben Urich character, also from the comics, he's just a big reporter that comments a lot on like big storylines. He's like this moral voice, like the voice of God or the voice of the narrator, just commenting on like stuff like Civil War with the heroes fighting each other. It's like the writers of the comic book storylines that he appears in use him to comment on their stories. It's like the way Agent Carter used those Captain America radio broadcasts. It's the same type of thing. In the TV series, he's more of a real character, but usually like in the comic books, when he appears, it's more of like this Captain America radio play commentary stuff. I know everyone's kind of pissed that he works for the Daily Bulletin and not the Daily Bugle, but I think when they were writing this, they hadn't reached an agreement with Sony, so they just had to stay away from Spider-Man stuff. They did do an Age of Ultron press conference where Kevin Feige confirmed that Spider-Man would be Peter Parker in Captain America Civil War, and he would be in high school. But that's all they said. They didn't say how much he would appear in Civil War, only that he'd be in it somewhere. I suspect that they probably have a pretty good idea who their actor is, and they're just waiting for them to sign a contract. So expect them to announce who that Spider-Man is sometime after Age of Ultron comes out in theaters. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to post my next Daredevil video sometime probably like Tuesday because Game of Thrones is tomorrow. So like all of Sunday and part of Monday will be dedicated to Game of Thrones. There's a new Ant-Man trailer that's going to post on Monday. So be sure to subscribe to get everything. It's going to be a great couple of days. Just in case you're not caught up on Game of Thrones, you can click here for like my season 1 to season 4 catch-up video. And you can click here for all my other Daredevil Avengers videos. I just posted like a fun Age of Ultron behind the scenes video. Thank you so much for watching. Everybody, let's high five. I'll see you guys tomorrow.